Well, we've talked a lot about Bill Gates' skin in the game when it comes to vaccines. Now he's put out a new clip on what the perfect vaccine might look like. Let's watch.
Even though these vaccines do an incredible job of preventing severe disease and death, they do not protect you from getting infected. They reduce the chance of getting infected by about 50%. We want to change it so that anybody who's gotten that vaccine cannot be infected again, taking them completely out of any transmission chain. We should be able to have a vaccine that attacks a core part of the virus that's found in all the variants. We would also like to have vaccines that you can just take once and you don't have to go back and keep getting boosters again and again.
He also said the manufacturing of vaccines could be improved and suggested the option of a patch or something you inhale rather than using a syringe. So I would really like to know, first of all, where Bill Gates is getting his stats, specifically on the prevention of transmission at 50% is what he was claiming.
Yeah, there's no way. I was going to mention that too. I think that might be true. There's no way that's true for Omicron at this point. I mean, people who have vaccinated and have the additional protection of a prior infection, I maybe have that high or more, but. Yeah, I don't think just maybe it's an open question, but it would surprise me if the protection against infection is that durable for someone who has not had COVID at all yet, is just vaccinated. I guess I don't know, but it would surprise me.
I mean, I'm sure it is 50% for a certain time window. So that's kind of where when you don't clarify and say, well, it's at 50% for the first, after 2 weeks of getting your shot, for the next 6 weeks after the 2 weeks, right? So you've got that protection at 50% from that point, but then it starts to wane. We know it wanes. We even know it wanes against severe illness. So I wouldn't even say that this is why we have fourth boosters going out for elderly people. It's not because this really protects you against severe disease after the 2-dose regimen. You have to continue to get it in order to protect against severe disease. We know this. That's why we're giving out boosters to elderly people. That's why Israel's been doing it.
If you're at a restaurant, you're sitting across from someone, talking, laughing, eating, drinking with them, and you've not had a prior infection and they have COVID, your chances are better than 50%. So there's just no way. But I also thought it was weird that clip was fine. It was just kind of wish casting. It was just kind of, well, this is what we'd like to see. And if you watch the full clip, he doesn't really elaborate on what we'll do to make, those are nice ideas, but what are we doing to make those happen?
Actually, they are happening. I mean, this is what's insane about this. So here in the United States, how many vaccines do we have available to us? We have Moderna, which has been banned, by the way, in half of Europe, for people under the age of 30 or in some countries under the age of 18. We have Johnson & Johnson, which they've now limited, right? And we have Pfizer. We don't have any other options besides that. Other countries have 10 or more vaccines. One vaccine in particular that many countries are using is the Cuban vaccine. But of course, here in the United States, we're not going to even talk about possibly using the Cubans' vaccine. Their vaccine is not based on the spike protein.
FDA.
So,
Rob DeSantis isn't even going to let people talk about the Cuban vaccine with his anti-communism day coming up.
I mean, unbelievable.
Oh, I was going to make this about my FDA reform radar, Briahna, but you slid right in there and took us to the, that was, well done.
Well, I want to ask both of you. And I'm seriously, I want to ask both of you because based on what he's saying in that clip, it seems like a departure from a lot of the messaging and the messaging confusion that we've all been tolerating over the last 2 years. He concedes that there's still a high rate of transmission after you're vaccinated, makes more limited claims about what vaccines can do, which is increase your odds once you do get COVID. Talks about a lot of the frustrations that people have had with the vaccine, which is that there's distrust that comes from the thought that we're going to have to continually get boosters for the rest of all time. It makes people even more skeptical that the pharmaceutical industries are working on our interest when they do create repeat players out of us. So the idea that they could have a vaccine that actually addresses all of the variants and also doesn't require a booster, it seems like it's calculated to address the concerns of much of the skeptical community. What do you both make of that? Do you think that it would encourage compliance and people's faith in the whole, pharmaceutical posture here if they were able to achieve the things that Gates sets out in that clip?
I guess we could all be guinea pigs, right? I mean, if that's what he's kind of saying, well, we've got to get these vaccines that do this, and we've got to get a vaccine that does that, and one that's administered this way. Well, I guess, okay, we'll just keep trying it every 6 months until finally, it works. I don't know. I mean, I don't, we are clearly being made into repeat players, as you say, Briahna. They're making a fortune off of us. The government continues to feed them more money. I feel like the pharmaceutical companies have made enough. They should start giving the vaccines out for free on their dime now at this point, not on our dime. But, we're just lining up and continuing. And then they're continuing to talk about mandating, especially for kids, even though the data has come out saying that for kids, it's like 12% effective. Yet they're saying, no, we're going to still mandate it for children. So I think people should start asking some questions on where is the motivation in this? Is it all about the money? Are they really truly trying to come up with a vaccine for a coronavirus, which we've never been able to do before for any coronavirus? I mean, but which doesn't mean we shouldn't try,
That's the idea of requiring it for anyone, but for children, given it's just insane at this point, given how, maybe it was always insane, given how that it does not, it may lessen transmission, but the waves are having no problem. New variants, new waves of COVID are really having no problem coming through. And given that, the benefit to teenagers and children who are otherwise healthy it's very difficult to stack them up against. There aren't usually tremendous downs. There's some issues, but the benefit is so small anyway that it's so hard to discern. I think it's hard to make that determination. Impossible. How on earth could you say at a policy level they have to be required to do it when you can't show a big enough discrepancy between the positive and negatives? I mean, it's just crazy that it's being contemplated.
But devil's advocate, were mandates part of what Gates was talking about in that clip? And then also, isn't the idea in that clip, again, this is wish casting at this point, but isn't the idea that we're talking about something that, for one, is more effective because it addresses all of these variants, and two, doesn't enable you to repeatedly get COVID once you've gotten the vaccine, so that you don't have this kind of skepticism that the pharmaceutical industry is trying to milk you for money by having you come back and be repeat players? Doesn't some of that go exactly to the heart of what is causing so many people concerns? If this is true, that we get a vaccine that you only have to take once, it obviously will be tested, FDA tested, and not just tested on the general public. So, there's an extent to which you're a guinea pig for everything, but, this is not, some wild thing that's going out into the wild. But if he's successful in the metrics that he's setting for the new round of vaccine, do you think that's going to cause people to want to voluntarily take it in a way that people who right now are like, it has limited efficacy, it doesn't save me from getting it? Will it make people more willing to voluntarily, you think, go ahead and get vaccinated, those who are still holding out?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I would say a lot of people would say, yeah, okay, I'll take a vaccine that prevents me from actually getting the disease. Many of us are vaccinated against a slew of diseases because we know that once we got those vaccines, we weren't going to get that disease again. So I'm sure, but when it comes to COVID, by the time we even get something like that out, you would have to make it for the next generation, I suppose, because of population, because everybody by then will have had COVID. So there should be some level of background natural immunity. But the problem with coronaviruses, like influenza, is you just get them over and over and over again. It's not like the measles. I never got the measles vaccine in particular, for example, because when I was a kid, I had measles. So when I went to the doctor, the way they did it was if you'd had a prior infection, you didn't get the vaccine. And if you didn't, then you got the vaccine. But in the 80s, early 80s, many of us got measles. So, but I got chicken pox. And I know now all the kids, they don't get chicken pox anymore. Kids don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
like chicken pox.
I got it when I was a kid. There's a vaccine, right? Yeah, now they take a vaccine. I got it when I was a kid. Yeah. I got it, and then 2 weeks later, my brother got it, my little brother, and then a week after that, my dad got it. He'd never had it as a kid, and he got it in his 40s. But
that's why they tried to, back in the day, they tried to get you to get chickenpox as a kid, and they would throw like chickenpox parties even and be like, okay, one kid got it, let's get them all together. But now they have a vaccine, so you never see little kids walking around with the little, boils all over their body. It's just But, if they could come up with a vaccine that stops it completely, then, maybe, but that is going to be a difficult feat considering we can continually catch this virus like we do influenza.
And even if they do that, I think it should still be people's choice, because they said, or somebody said, we were presented with information claiming that the initial vaccine would, reduced even transmission by 90-something%. So that, effectively preventing it. And that was a promise of the vaccine, and then it turned out not to be. That did not hold up over time, given either waning immunity or new strains or both.
I mean, since we are talking about chickenpox, the idea would be that the new vaccine would work the way that chickenpox does conclusively, and we're talking about chickenpox and measles, there are requirements. It's not like a federal mandate, but most schools do require a slate of vaccines before kids can come in the general population and attend the public school. I wonder what each of you think about those similar standards that are currently applied to any number of childhood diseases being applied to a COVID vaccine that was actually effective in the ways that the ones we have right now are not.
Well, going back to that, I mean, like I mentioned, I never got the measles vaccine, but I've never gotten measles again. Because once you get measles,
but COVID obviously works differently than measles.
Right, so that's the issue. So even though, once you get the chickenpox, once you get the measles, you're done with it, whether you're vaccinated or not. Once you have the immunity, it's pretty much lifelong. I mean, there are some reoccurrences, but very rare. When they say rare, we mean rare on that one. COVID is a totally different ballgame like influenza. You're probably going to get it every couple of years. So that makes it a bit different. It's not an actual inoculation. It's not a sterilizing vaccine the way we think of vaccines when we think of them. It is more of a, maybe if it could prevent you from getting it every couple of years for a couple of years at a time, but again, are you going to mandate kids get that every couple of years?
I'm at the point where because of how broad and dystopian and Orwellian the mandates have been, I'm at the point where I am absolutely against any further ones without question. It was a license to the state, to the CDC, to federal health officials to wrap, face diapers around children for years, and I will not allow it anymore, no matter how well intended it is. But we don't have to cross this bridge yet because we don't have such a vaccine. Hopefully one day we do, because I absolutely want people to be able to take it. I want them to be able to take the other ones that are available right now, but it should be their choice. So tomorrow on Rising, we'll discuss this week's crypto chaos with my colleague at Reason, Liz Wolfe.
And Nevada candidate for Congress, Amy Villa, will join us to discuss her second run for the state's 1st district.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. So be sure to check that out. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
See you then.